We have about 7 attendees here in this live call, and then I'm also doing a live stream on a Facebook group that has about 500 members.
Fantastic.
So we'll be having questions along the way, and then I've given permissions to few people who can ask us questions through audio call as well.
Well, first of all, thanks so much for inviting me on. This is a topic that administrative processing and administrative processing delays is a topic that I've literally devoted my entire career to. I wake up in the morning, I go to work, and I attack this all day long for people just like the ones in your group who are stuck in the dark, just sitting on their hands, not knowing what to do or what's going to happen. It's really a horrible, horrible thing, administrative processing. And you know, the thing is there's not that much known about it. You know, you don't hear about it in the newspaper. You hear about a lot of other immigration injustices, but there's been very little media attention put on to this policy where people go for a visa and then they just say administrative processing and then they just put them in a black box. You know what I mean?
Yep. That is why we are here. We wanted to know everything we can about 221G, how you are helping your clients, and answer some questions while members are here. So sure. Before we go there, introduce yourself, Josh. How did you come into immigration practice? Where are you located? Where do you practice? I see that you have office both in California and in Boston, right?
Yeah. So I live here in Los Angeles and I have offices downtown LA. And I moved to LA about 5 years ago and opened that office from Boston. We have a bunch of clients in the entertainment industry, and I was coming out here all the time, so it made sense to expand my practice. We are a small office. We have 3 associates, attorneys in our office, and a staff of about 5 paralegals. And we specialize exclusively in immigration law. It's sort of full service immigration firm. So we help people get green cards through marriage. We work on O1 visas, H1B visas, you name it. So we help people get citizenship. We take on cases across the country and around the world. We work, a lot of our clients are located remotely. So we get people calling us from Texas and so on. And one of my specializations throughout my career has been mandamus lawsuits. So I sue USCIS and I sue the State Department, consulates, and other immigration agencies on behalf of people just like those in the 221G group who have been delayed by immigration. And I've been doing this for a long time. Let me give you a little bit of background about this. In 2006, nobody was talking about administrative processing. Back then, the big problem was this thing called the FBI name check. And the way it would work is you'd apply for a green card or you'd apply for for citizenship through naturalization. And at your interview, if you were completely eligible to be approved, they wouldn't approve you. It was just like 221G. And so what they would do is they say, sorry, we can't give you approval because of the FBI name check. I don't even know what that is. I still don't. And so what we would do is we would sue them. And we'd had people that had been waiting for 4 or 5 years or 2 years or 18 months for this name check to come through, this mysterious FBI name check. So we sued the FBI. We would include them as defendants. And we won every case that we filed like that. And so that's what it was all about. It was this FBI name check. And today we see the same thing with administrative processing. No different.
No different. Okay. All right. Josh, are you holding the phone? Because you might be holding it for a long time, at least in 45 minutes an hour. So maybe you can find another spot where you can put something on the table or something, because I know it'll be painful for you to be holding it for a while.
Okay. Hang on.
Sure.
Let me see. I have a little stand here.
Okay.
Thanks for your technical advice.
After a while, it's going to hurt your hands.
Okay.
All right.
Is that better?
It's better. Oh. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks.
All right. So how did you become this 221G specialist? Because not a lot of attorneys talk about this, and this
Yeah,
happens silently, right? People who go for stamping, and this
yeah,
happens outside the country, not within the US. So they go for stamping and they get this form, and there is literally no updates. You cannot get any
yeah,
update. Only thing you get is your status remain, your visa remain refused under 221G.
right,
We do not have any update to give you at this time. The same standard reply in different form is what that is given. So
right.
how did you get into this 221G specialization?
Well, like I said, my background as an immigration lawyer and my specialization as an immigration lawyer is with Mandamus lawsuits. So I'm the guy who sues immigration agencies on behalf of clients who have been delayed. So the Mandamus lawsuit is all about a delay. You're eligible for the green card, for citizenship, for the work permit, for a visa, whatever you're applying for, but there's a delay. So conceptually, it's the same problem that I've faced throughout my career. In 2006, it was, they called it the FBI name check. Now they're calling it administrative processing. It's the same thing. It's the same name. It's a different name, but it's the same problem. It's this bureaucratic excuse for a delay. Administrative processing is a meaningless term. It doesn't mean anything. It just means that they're not going to give you the visa that you deserve. That's all it means.
So let's go. Somebody is going for visa interview, and the
Yeah.
consulate officer tells them that, okay, your visa is refused. We have to do 221G. Sometimes they give it right to the candidate at the application window, or sometimes they said your visa is approved, but then 221G comes into picture. So
Mm-hmm.
why does visa officer give a 221G in first place? For some candidate, for others, they do not.
There's no answer to that question. It's mysterious because one of the things that's frustrating about 221G is that they never explain the nature of the problem. They just give you, maybe they'll make a cryptic comment like, oh, there's a security check, or there's a background check, or, sometimes the 221G comes about because there are legitimate concerns about whether the candidate is eligible for the visa. For example, you go to apply for a green card through marriage and you're going for an immigrant visa, and the consulate doesn't believe that your underlying marriage relationship is genuine, right? So instead of denying the visa, they said, we're not going to give you the visa today. We're going to give you 221G. So sometimes there's an underlying problem. Other times, it's just because there's a background check. And that's the problem. And then for Iran, a lot of my clients are Iranian nationals. So 221G is a blanket excuse to deny or to put on hold anyone who's an Iranian national who they don't want to give the visa to. Not all Iranian nationals are barred by the Muslim ban or the travel ban or whatever they're calling it, presidential proclamation. Not all of them are banned by that. So, but if you're from Iran and you go in for a visa that you deserve to be approved on, then suddenly you get 221G. So the answer to your question is there's no explanation at all why anyone would get 221G. Let me give you an example that I think illustrates this very well. When I see 221G or administrative processing, I mean, what I think is there are two solutions. The first is that you can sit on your hands and wait, and you can contact the consulate, and you can contact the embassy, and you can contact your senator or your congressman. You can do all those things, and you should do those things. But the other thing you can do is file a mandamus lawsuit, and that's where my services come in. But when we filed a lawsuit against the consulate to challenge an administrative processing delay, I had a case like this where the attorney for the government came back to me, and actually the problem was that they were having trouble locating the file. So they
Wow.
asked me for a copy of the whole file.
Wow.
And I said, sure, I'll email it to you, no problem. So that was the underlying problem. and the applicant had no idea. I don't know how that person would ever have gotten approved if they didn't file a lawsuit. So it's a very weird thing.
Wow. So, okay, so in the consulate, 220G is issued, and somebody is waiting for weeks, months, or nobody knows how long it's going to take.
Yeah.
Literally, the only update the person can get is the last update date. In the CEAC site gets changed, and it changes 10 times in a month. Sometimes it changes only after a year, and after that there is nothing. So, and if I look at the forums, people tell, I sent an email to consulate asking for my status, and then I saw an update on the last updated. Maybe they added a note in the my application that this person has requested the status, but nobody knows what that is. So when 220 is issued, what happens in the background? What happens after the paper is given? The consular officer says this one.
Well, the first question you asked me is, why does someone get 221G? And my answer was, nobody knows why that is. And your next question is, what happens during 221G? And you know what the answer is to that? It's the same thing. Nobody knows what they're doing. For all the people out there in your group who are stuck in this horrible black hole of 221G, do you actually think on Monday morning a consular officer gets up and goes to work and gets your file off the shelf and does anything with your case? Do you really think that that's what's happening? Or do you think that nothing at all is what's happening? The answer is it's total speculation to think about what the government is doing during 221G, whether they're doing anything or something. I mean, I've been involved with countless lawsuits against 221G, and I don't have any idea what it is. Neither does anyone else. The government is not forthcoming about what, if anything, they're checking. So again, the answer to this question, your other question, and probably all the other questions about 221G, we don't know. We don't know what it is. We don't know what's causing it. We don't know how long it's going to take. We don't know what they're actually doing, if anything.
Why is it the system set up that way? Can a law change this?
Okay, I think the problem comes in because of this rule, this law, this concept in immigration law, which I don't think many people are familiar with. Immigration lawyers are, but it's called the doctrine of consular non-reviewability. The doctrine of consular non-reviewability. This has been upheld by the Supreme Court. And it basically says that the consulates can do whatever the hell that they want. They can make any decision, no matter how unfair, wrong, capricious, arbitrary. They can do whatever they want, and you have no legal recourse against that. There's no appeal. They don't have to write their decision in a written memo. They just give you this worksheet. So they can make any decision they want. And if they can make any decision that they want, there's also no administrative procedure to challenge any aspects of the administrative adjudication process. So it basically gives them so much power over the applicants. And when they have all this power, it's no coincidence that they make a lot of bad decisions. They make unfair decisions, and they put people on hold. And I don't think many people out there are aware that they can sue these consulates and they can challenge these delays. So they can get away with this. The concept of administrative processing, by the way, is, in my opinion, completely illegal. There's nothing in the Immigration and Nationality Act that mentions administrative processing. There's nothing in the immigration regulations that talk about administrative processing. It's just something that they came up with. I think there are a few references in the Foreign Affairs Manual, but it's really nothing that's ever been challenged legally about their right to do this. And I think people, that's the nature of the problem. It's that the consulates have so much legal power that they can get away with it.
Okay, so so you mentioned about Mandamus lawsuits, but when you tell the word, we are going to sue the government, then the first thing that comes to the mind is like, what? suing the government, they're probably going to deny my case and forget going back to the US. How do you, that is the first, it's going to
Yeah.
come to mind. So
Yeah.
how do you make sure, or what do you tell to your clients to that, you know what, that is okay, that is allowed to do it? You are smiling, so probably you're getting the same question every time somebody is asking you that.
Um, uh, nobody wants to sue the government. Nobody wants to sue the government. I'm a lawyer who sues the government. I don't even want to sue the government. I'd rather be working on other types of cases. Nobody should have to go out and hire a lawyer to sue the government in federal court just to get a routine visa approved. That's absurd. That's totally ridiculous. But I think people come to me and they hire me to do the lawsuit because they are so frustrated and they're so desperate and they don't know what else to do, because at some point, if you wait, at some point you're going to give up. You're going to get so frustrated and upset and desperate that you'll do anything to make the waiting stop. And that's why people sue the government. They sue the government, and also I get a lot of referrals. That helps a lot, because once I get one person approved, then 4 or 5 of their friends say, "Oh yeah, you did my friend's case." So then there's a little bit more of a comfort level. But I totally get that. I know that it sounds completely crazy for someone to sue the government, because most of my clients, here's another aspect of this. Not all my clients, but most of my clients are from predominantly Muslim countries. So I think a lot of this, it has to do with targeting people because of their religion or their ethnic or national origin, which is, it's totally discriminatory. But whatever country you come from, suing the government for somebody from a foreign country, it sounds crazy. It sounds risky. It sounds dangerous. It sounds like somebody who would, it sounds, pardon me, am I back? Sorry. It sounds like something that would get you nowhere because they would retaliate. But I've never had a case in my career, through countless mandamus cases, I've never had a case where I felt that my clients were being discriminated against or retaliated against because of the lawsuit. In fact, it's quite the opposite. By filing the lawsuit, you get better treatment. It
How is
works
that?
out better for you.
So yeah,
Because
that sounds contradictory, right? You have to sue the government, and then, because, for example, a person who is here attending the call, they are sitting in India waiting for 220 to be clear for 4 or 5 months or whatever time. And now you're telling I'm going to sue the government, but
yeah,
I'm assuming we cannot control whether the approval or denial, but we can make the government respond faster. So that is the suing the government, right, comes into picture, right?
yeah. Look. Right now, if you're sitting in India and your visa's stuck and you don't know what to do, you call your congressman, you talk to your lawyer. Your lawyer has no idea. Most immigration lawyers have no idea about mandamus lawsuits. They refer mandamus lawsuits to me. So there's not a lot of information out there about this, and mandamus is not something that most lawyers present to clients as an option. But when you file the lawsuit, your case goes from the bottom of the pile to the top of the pile. Suddenly, by filing the lawsuit, you got their attention. You know, you went and kicked the hornet's nest. And finally, like, you know, after you file the lawsuit, we'll talk about the mechanics of it. It probably takes about 2 months to get their attention after filing it. But once you file the lawsuit, suddenly getting your case resolved becomes a very, very high priority for them, because they're going to have to go to court and get a lawyer, and they're going to have to explain why you have been delayed, and they're going to have to give an answer to a judge, and they're going to have to deal with this, and they don't want to deal with the lawsuit. They just don't want to deal with it. So I think that you will find that you'll get a much better experience once you've filed the lawsuit. The U.S. Attorney's Office gets involved, and I can communicate with the U.S. Attorney's Office. In certain recent cases, I've helped arrange consular appointments. You just don't have that level of communication unless you have filed a lawsuit. Otherwise, you're stuck with the CX system and all that, and it's really difficult.
So you just mentioned I was able to get a consular appointment. So how does suing the government gets attention to the case?
Well, because if you sue the government, then they have to respond to your lawsuit. You've asked a judge you've challenged the delay in court, and you've asked the judge to take action on the case. You have sued the consulate, and when I sue the consulate, I sue everyone up and down the chain of command. I'm going to sue DHS. I'm going to sue USCIS. I'm going to sue the State Department because that's the agency that runs the consulates. I'm going to sue the consulate itself. I'm going to sue the consular officer or the head of the consular post. We name probably about 8 or 10 defendants. We sue everyone. Sorry, your question was about what they do.
So when you're filing the suit,
how does it get their attention?
Yep.
Okay, so once you file the lawsuit, you have to serve them. You have to formally send them a copy of the lawsuit so they can be put on notice that they've been sued. And after they've been sued, they have 60 days to answer the lawsuit. At the end of the 60 days, they have to file an answer in court. So once you sued them, they have no choice but to respond. They have to respond. You've got their full attention. There's nothing more serious you can do than suing them. So by the very nature of the legal system, they have to respond. And once they have to respond, there's a chain of command that they have. They have the legal counsel for the State Department who gets involved, and the U.S. Attorney gets involved, and all these people who have a lot of authority get involved. And that's when you see action on your case.
So what's the possibility of positive outcome versus negative outcome? Okay, you sued us. You know what? I'm going to deny your case. I'm done with this.
Right.
That can happen, right? Or
well, I would answer the question differently. I would ask the question differently. If you file a mandamus lawsuit, there is no guarantee that you're going to be approved, right? This lawsuit is not going to take somebody who doesn't deserve the visa and is not going to make them approvable. I had someone the other day who contacted me and said, look, I want to file a lawsuit. My H-1B visa has been stuck for a long time. I'm frustrated. I got this job. I want to go to work. And I said, great, I can help you. These are the sorts of cases that I do. And we talked about it. But once I started asking a bunch of questions about his H-1B visa, I could tell that there were underlying problems with his visa itself. He had switched employers. There had been a letter of revocation to his last employer. His current H-1B visa had it was just a mess. So there was really a underlying problem going on with the case. And that's not the kind of lawsuit that I want to be involved with, because what's going to happen is we file a lawsuit and then the person's going to get denied, or they could get denied, but they're not going to be denied because of the lawsuit. They're going to be denied because there's an underlying problem. And that's quite different. And I want to make sure that everybody understands that. So for example, if you file an application for an immigrant visa based on marriage, and you go to your interview for your visa and you lay an egg at the interview, you go in there and they ask you questions about your wife, and you don't know your wife's birthday, you don't know where she works, and maybe you get nervous and you mess everything up. Well, the mandamus lawsuit is not going to, they still could deny your case because they don't believe that your marriage relationship is genuine. So I don't think there's no retaliation going on. There's no retaliation, but you still have the risk of denial in general.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Sure. So which means if the applicant knows there is an underlying problem in their visa background, then this might get the denial faster. Maybe it may come, but if there's underlying problem, but it's not a helpful scenario for them to file.
You need to talk to that's something I want to really chat with people about carefully to
Sure.
make sure that I understand the nature of their case, the nature of the problem, the nature of the delay, so that we can talk about this. Like maybe there's a problem with the case, but the person insists that they're eligible. Like, okay, USCIS questioned my H-1B, but it got approved and I deserve this. And my company is, and maybe everything is in order, but the consulate is just skeptical. If that's the case, well, let's fight them. Let's sue it. Let's sue them. Let's bring it on. You know what I mean? But in other cases, maybe there's a serious problem that I think could lead to denial. So I think that that's a conversation you want to have with the lawyer who's preparing the mandamus. Like, I want to chat with you. I want to review the file before we just jump in, because the thing is, I don't want to lose any case I take on. I want to be very careful about the cases that I take on so that I'm not wasting people's time, money, and I'm not wasting my own effort,
Sure. All right. What is the success rate of getting them to respond faster when you have done this, Josh?
It's 100%. I mean, I think if your choices are to keep waiting or to file a lawsuit, and you're asking yourself which one's going to go faster, the lawsuit for sure. I mean, the lawsuit is not as, a lot of people are, I give people pretty realistic estimates for how long the lawsuit is going to take. And my estimate is usually most cases that people hire me on are resolved within 3 to 5 months.
Sure.
Okay, 3 to 5 months. But some of the cases are 6 months, 5 or 6 months, something like that. And, a lot of people are really frustrated with the delay. And then when they hear that even if they file a mandamus lawsuit, they could be waiting 3, 5, 6 months more, a lot of people are frustrated by that. So, nothing, if you hire me, I don't think anything will happen within at least 2 months, 2 to 3 months.
Okay. So what is the fastest you had something got a result, fastest time?
I mean, I would say I've had cases that have been resolved in 60 days.
60 days. Okay.
And this was for an Iranian national.
Okay.
So we filed the lawsuit, and then 60 days later, the visa was issued.
So, for example, if I'm going to take this route, right, then the dilemma I would have is, if you're telling me the timeline is 60 days to 150 days, so why wouldn't I wait it out to see? So how would you answer for that? 5 months versus just wait it out?
That I think I'm not selling the law. I'm not trying to sell you on the lawsuit. I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to help my clients and help people make the best decision. It's
Sure.
not like I'm selling a used car and I'm trying to get you to do the lawsuit and because I need more clients or something like. It's not like that at all. If you look at this lawsuit and you say, listen, if I hire a lawyer, I'm gonna have to pay the lawyer money. I'm gonna have to file the lawsuit, and then there's gonna be this delay. I think I'd be better off just waiting, because this is likely to get approved. If I just wait it out, it's likely to get approved in a couple of months. Then I think that's a smart decision. You shouldn't file a lawsuit. If you think that just by simply waiting, you can get your case approved in a few months, then I don't think you should file a lawsuit. The people who hire me are people who are stuck, and they would still, a lot of these people who have gotten approved would still be stuck if they hadn't filed a lawsuit, because there was really no movement on their case.
Yeah, because if you look at the 222G group where you are, a lot of people in there are telling that I've been waiting for the K1 fiance visa for like more than a year.
Yeah.
So there are like 1,300 members in the group, and then a lot of people are there waiting for 8 months, 10 months, easy.
Yeah, I mean, I've had people who've been waiting for 4 years.
4 years?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And then I was able to get that person approved in a matter of a few months.
Okay. All right.
So I think it's sort of like people are swimming in a pond, and they're going down, but they don't know where the bottom is, right? So like if you don't really know how long it's going to take you to get approved. And I think you have to judge how important is getting this resolved. But for somebody who's been waiting a year for a K1 visa, I mean, I hope that that person gets approved tomorrow on Monday morning. But at that point, I think you really need to think about mandamus. You need to at least have a talk with me about whether this would make sense for you.
All right, because that's a tough decision that but individual person has to make, because I've been stuck for 2 or 3 months is what somebody is thinking, and another 3, 4 months. After 3 months, if they don't get anything, then they probably have to make another decision. So
well, I think it depends. I think it depends on what the nature of the case is. Let me talk you through it. If you're going for a visitor visa, a B2 visa, and you want to file a mandamus case to get a decision on the B2 visa, I don't think that makes a lot of sense, because most B2 visa applications are denied. And it just doesn't make a lot of sense. If you want to file it for an F1 visa, I mean, you could be missing a year of school, even if you do file the lawsuit. But on the other hand, maybe someone has an opportunity of a lifetime to go to school in the US. And maybe they are getting a PhD at Caltech, and they have gotten a full ride, and this is their life's dream. And, you know, their advisor told them that they need to be back for a thesis, and they've worked for 3 years on the thesis, and they were just trying to renew their visa. So there could be some really powerful things involved. But I think for the immigrant visa, then I think that's a better use case for the mandamus lawsuit, because if you're married to a US citizen, or you're engaged to get married, you have an F1 visa, or you're the beneficiary of an approved employment-based case, you have a lot at stake there. And you can't just be waiting blindly for years for this. I think you have to take action. And so it's really the importance of the underlying visa that I think comes into play.
Sure. And especially if somebody who's on H1, let's say they went for vacation and then they went for stamping, they got stuck. They have a home probably here, they have cars, everything is all stuck. And I think I just lost your video. Everything is stuck. They do not know when they are going to be back. Maybe somebody who's on H1B will be able to get it. Would you advise them, whether, if let's say people are listening to this right now, or somebody who's going to listen to this in the future, how would you advise them? What would you recommend them they do? I'm thinking.
So sorry, can you repeat? So someone's on an, sorry, I was just dealing with my phone. I got to.
Sure.
Someone's on an H1B visa, and they're stuck, and they go on vacation for routine stamping, and they just end up stuck in this administrative processing delay.
Yeah, probably somebody like that. So if they are stuck and they listen to our interview and they want to know whether it makes sense, because you discussed about for some cases it's worth filing and some cases it's not worth filing. And also you want to make sure you will take on the cases that you can win. So if somebody approaches you, what would be the process that you'll go through with them?
I want to have a conversation with this person before I don't want to just file a lawsuit. Like, let's do that. I want to talk to them so that I make sure that they understand the goals. And I offer consultations through video conferencing for international clients. So we can arrange, I can book these appointments with people and arrange this in a very easy way. I have a scheduling tool on my website where people can find it. My website is www.josh.law. So if you go to www.josh.law, you'll end up in my website. But to answer your question, here are the kind of things that I would want to mention to somebody who's in that situation. First of all, I'd want to discuss a little bit about their H-1B case. I'd want to make sure that it was approvable, that everything is in order, that, you know, there's no funny business going on, so that the person the question I'm asking myself is, does this person on the merits deserve to be approved? Or is there really an underlying problem with the case? So that's question number one. And the second thing, and if that's the case and the person's delayed and they want to sue, and they've been delayed for a while, then I want to make sure that the person who's interested in suing understands and has a realistic understanding of what the lawsuit's all about. The lawsuit is going to take time. If you hire me, it's going to take 3, 4, 5, 6 months, maybe more. I don't really know. It's going to take time before you're going to get any action on it. And if you hire me and I file a lawsuit, it's not like a bolt of lightning shoots out of the sky and they just issue the visa. It takes time. It's going to take a few months. So I don't want to give people an unrealistic expectation of what I'm able to deliver on. I'm a good lawyer. I'm not a magician. And also the other thing is that there's no guarantee that the lawsuit will have a successful outcome. Somebody could hire me and they could wind up getting denied. And I think that's a risk that all of my clients have to shoulder. I tell everyone the same thing. It's in all, no guarantee is something that is in all my paperwork and so on.
All right, sure. And let's ask the readers, folks here, please use the Q&A tab to answer ask your questions. And also people who are on Facebook Live, please post your questions on the comments. I will read it to Tony. So I have a question. Somebody is asking, what is the cost to do this? I think we don't want to discuss the cost, Josh. Maybe they can reach out to you directly. And once you have the first call with them, understand what's going on, then you can discuss the cost with them, right?
Yeah, I think that makes better sense. And also, you know, just to give you one sense, I generally charge a flat fee to handle these cases. But the fee that I actually charge varies from case to case slightly based on what I view as the complexity of the work. And some cases I think I'm going to expect there'll be a lot more work than other cases. And there's a filing fee for the court, which is $400. There's about $50 in postage fees, but generally I charge a flat fee. I ask for payment in full before the case starts, and that's it. And the flat fee is designed to cover everything. There's no hidden charges or anything like that. The other thing that I have people do before we file the lawsuit is I have them sign a basic representation agreement that basically says I'm going to be their lawyer. They're going to be my client. This is what the fees are. This is what I'm going to do. So they're aware and they have everything in writing, which is just something that is standard practice for me and most attorneys.
Okay. So I have another question. How much time we should wait before we approach Josh after getting 221G? Is it 60 days or 90 days?
Well, look, as soon as you see 221G, you should be concerned. This is not a normal thing. But should you file a mandamus lawsuit the morning on the day after you get your 221G worksheet? No, I don't think that makes sense. But after you've waited for a month or 2 months or 3 months, then I think, you know, certainly after 6 months, I think it's time to consider filing a lawsuit. But that's really a personal decision at that point.
All right. Okay, I have another question. During 221G, they asked to submit all the supporting documents, even employer financial documents, and sometimes employer is not comfortable sharing with us. An employer direct email doesn't help sometimes. How do we deal with this?
Boy, that's a tough situation. So if I understand this correctly, you go to your consular interview and the consulate says, we need more information. We need a copy of we need to see your employer's most recent tax return, for example. And the employer comes back and says, I'm not giving them the tax return. I'm not going to send these documents. They want to see my incorporation documents. I'm not going to provide them with that. Well, that's a problem. I mean, you know, you're the beneficiary of the visa. You can't force the employer to do anything. The employer could decide to give up on you and hire someone else. So I don't think the mandamus lawsuit is going to, you can't force your employer to do that. So I think that's just a very difficult, unfortunate situation. Yeah.
Or would the person have an option where the employer's attorney can send the documents directly to the consulate without giving it to the client, to the employee, so the employee will not know the intricacies? Is that an option?
Yeah, I mean, certainly if there's an H-1B visa, there's very likely a lawyer involved. The company has a lawyer. There's some immigration lawyer put together the case. And I'm sure that the lawyer could follow up directly with the consulate. Sure, why not?
All right.
Great idea.
All right. Folks, any other questions, please do let us know. Please post it in the Q&A session.
One thing I want to mention is So when you get 221G, they say that the visa has been refused, right? And that's a very interesting word, because it does not mean that your visa was denied, right? If your visa was denied, that's totally different. Because if your visa were denied, that means that the case is over, that there's no more, that nothing is being processed. So it's not the same. Like being refused under 221G is not the same as saying that you were denied. It kind of feels that way because you're maybe waiting so long, but it's not a denial.
Interesting. So that is something new. So typically when people tell my visa is refused, which leads to think it's a synonym for denial, but that's not the case. So let me
Yeah.
ask you, if somebody got 221G and then later they got the approval,
Yeah.
and they go for another stamping, say 3-4 years down the lane, in the DS-160, what do you select? Has your visa been ever refused? Do they select yes on the DS-160 or no for that?
Well, you could split I forget the question on the DS-260 exactly, but there's two ways to go about these sorts of things. One is you can split hairs and you can say, well, it wasn't refused, it was just given 221G. So they may use the word refused, but it wasn't denied. So I'm going to say no to that question. Or in the other ways you can do it is you can tell them about it. And you can say yes. But I don't think it really matters. I mean, they have computers, they have meticulous records. If 3 years ago you were putting 221G and you go back for another stamp, it's not like they're not going to know about it. They're going to know. So I don't think it really matters, but I think my general preference, I'm inclined to tell them everything. Have you ever been arrested? Yes, I was arrested. I got a speeding ticket, something like that. Whereas most people are like, well, this isn't an arrest, it's something else.
It's better to be on the safer side and then tell them everything than dealing with later.
Better be over-inclusive.
All right. Okay. All right.
In your answers, I think.
Okay.
That's how I would approach it.
All right.
And most people would think the opposite.
Sure.
There was a question that I think is very interesting that somebody just asked. I think it was Sabu. And the question was, how much experience do I have filing lawsuits against administrative processing delays for H-1B visa people? And the answer is not very much. Very few, only a couple of my cases have been with H-1B visas. And I think it's because the more important the visa is, the more someone may be inclined to file the lawsuit. And I don't mean in any way to denigrate the importance of an H-1B visa, but that's a non-immigrant or that's a temporary visa. And I think it's different than when there's an immigrant visa and there's more at stake. But it's certainly, there's no reason you couldn't file a lawsuit to resolve the H-1B visa delayed through administrative processing.
Okay. So in other terms, maybe a lot of people probably did not know about this one, that people are waiting and they did not even know that this is possible. Or number two can be that, hey, I still don't believe I want to sue the government. I just want to stay idle. Maybe the lack of awareness, or maybe they just don't want to go through that. But now but the question is, you mentioned you filed a couple of cases. Does it mean that you will not be able to do successfully as an immigrant case, or it doesn't matter?
You mean would it be unsuccessful if you file it for a non-immigrant visa or for an H-1B visa?
No, Josh. So you have a lot of experience in immigrant visa filing the lawsuits.
Yeah.
But if somebody who's on H-1B approaches you, would you be still able to do it with the same level of documentation that you do for immigrant visa?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, recently I've had a couple cases that I've won. One was an J2 visa.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here's what happened. We had a professor at MIT. He was from Pakistan. And his wife went back to the consulate she had to go back to Pakistan for some reason. And they have a US citizen child. So she took the baby, she went back to Pakistan to get her visa stamped. Guess what happened? Administrative processing. So she was stuck there. And this guy is a new father. The baby and his wife were in Pakistan. It's a non-immigrant visa, but they're stuck. So we filed the lawsuit, we challenged it, they issued the visa, the guy's wife is back. So here we have a case in this situation where it's a non-immigrant visa, right? But the stakes are high. We have a mother, a wife, a child, they're all separated from their father for no reason at all, other than the fact that the guy's Pakistani. If he had been from Canada and not a Pakistani national, I've no doubt he would never have been in administrative processing. But that's the nature of the system, unfair though it is. So there's no reason you couldn't file a mandamus lawsuit for a delayed H-1B visa. There's no reason at all. And I think it would work with the same degree of effectiveness. Just want to carefully evaluate the fact and the merits of the H-1B visa, make sure that it's totally solid, and make sure that the person who's filing it understands that, you know, it could take 3 to 6 months or so.
Sure. All right. So we got another question from Rizwan. Hi, Raghu. This is Rizwan Al-Haq Muhammad. I've been handed 221G for H1B and no documents asked. No updates on portal for last 6 months. What should I do? Also, I had a 221G in 2015 for my F1 visa, but that got approved in 15 days.
Yeah. What should that person do?
Yep. What should the person do?
Okay. All the time I'm asked by people in administrative processing, what should I do? What should I do? And there are basically two different approaches. One is to keep doing whatever you've been doing, which is to say you're sitting on your hands, you're waiting. Maybe you've called your congressman, maybe you've talked to your lawyer, you're keep asking questions through, keep emailing the consulate, but essentially you're just waiting. And the second possibility, I mean, we sue them. But that's it. That's the only thing you can do. You can keep waiting, or you can file a lawsuit. And if you keep waiting, you know, this person got their administrative processing delay resolved in 15 days a few years ago, and they've been waiting 6 months now. But there's no reason in the world why it might not be resolved just by simply waiting. If they wait another month or another 2 months, the visa could get issued. If the person is sick and tired of waiting and they're frustrated and they're ready to take action and they want to consider suing, then let's set up a call and let's talk about it and see if I can answer more questions specifically about your case and see if it makes sense to file a lawsuit.
Sure. It's joshlaw.com, right? Where they can
No, it's www.josh.law.
Josh.law. Okay. All right. Yeah, you got the fancy domain name.
Yeah, well, I wanted the .law thing. I want to keep it short. Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Okay. So I do not have any other question. There is always this conception that if I go to Canada, I can avoid 221G, or if I change the consulate to make it easier, how do you handle? Because before you came on the call, I was talking to somebody that is going to India, I'm going to go to Mexico, and what if I get stuck? I want to get planned for that. Does the choice of consulate have an impact?
I mean, again, I think the answer to all the specific questions about 221G, you have to understand that there's really no understanding of what 221G is or how it works or what causes 221G or how long the delay will take or what they're actually checking. So when you start asking really specific questions like, you know, to try to could you go be processed in Canada? The answer is who knows. But you have to also think logistically. Let's say that you're from Bangladesh. You're going on an H-1B visa. You have a family in the U.S. You're working in the U.S. You're on an H-1B visa. You arrange to go to, let's say Montreal to get your H-1B visa renewed and issued. If you get stuck in 221G, you're going to be stuck in Canada. You won't have any way to get back to the U.S. So then instead of being stuck in 221G where you could go live with your parents while you're waiting this out, you're going to have the additional expense of arranging a flight from Canada back to your home country. So I think there's that. And, you know, but to answer your question another way, can you avoid 221G by being processed in a third country, Canada, Bahamas, whatever? The answer is I really don't know. maybe that would really work well, but I haven't heard that from any other lawyers. I think
Okay.
that's something that sounds like came out of the rumor mill. But
Okay.
if it works, great.
And to continue the logistics, if they get stuck and consulate keeps the passport and there is no response for a month or two, then they have to request the passport to get it back, then fly to wherever their home country is, but they have to come back to Canada to get their passport stamped and the visa is issued. So it is a logistical nightmare, a lot of expense.
Yeah.
And if you are in a city,
And
yeah.
third country, we call that TCN, third country nationals. It's frowned upon in consular processing. So a lot of people, like I have a client right now from Australia, and he's got a wife and 2 kids. For him to go to the consulate to get a visa, he could be spending, $10,000 in airline tickets or whatever. I don't know how much it costs, but it's a big deal to fly to Australia, and I get that. But I think that it's very much frowned upon to go to a local these other consulates.
Okay. All right. Okay. So let's see, Josh. I do not have any other questions. Oh, this one just popped up.
Okay, great.
Does the lawsuit deal with approval denial of H-1B, or it will be an expenses incurred in USA while we wait in India, paying rent and car monthly payments?
Yeah. So I guess let me break that down. So the question, I think, is, does the lawsuit cover a challenge to a denial, right?
Yep.
So let's say that you hire me to do the Mandamus lawsuit, and then the consulate in response says, we're going to deny your application for the visa. It's over. We're not issuing the visa. We're not going to do it. My lawsuit does not cover that. My lawsuit, the Mandamus lawsuit, is about challenging a delay. You are not asking, you can't force them to approve you. They could deny you. They're well within their rights to approve or deny any application, any request for a visa. They can approve it, they can deny it. But what they can't do is they can't just sit on it forever.
Okay.
They have to make a decision. They have to give you a thumbs up or thumbs down decision. They can't just put you in this black box called administrative processing and do nothing. That's illegal. That's unreasonable and it's unfair. And that's what we're fighting. We're fighting the delay. But once the consulate issues a decision, if it's a bad decision, you're stuck with it. Because remember how I told you about the doctrine of consular non-reviewability? Non-reviewability. You can't review the decision. There's no way to appeal the denial of a visa application. The only thing you can do is refile another request.
Okay. Which means like applying for visa again. So that's the only thing they can do.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So which means the person has to be still back in their home country wherever they are stuck while this lawsuit is pending. So I think,
as a lawyer, what I'm trying to do before I take on a client and before I file the Mandamus lawsuit is I want to understand the nature of their case a little more to make sure that they're on solid footing and that I believe that they're going to get approved. Because I want everyone who hires me to file the Mandamus lawsuit to be happy and have a good outcome and to get approved. I don't want anyone to hire me and then come away with the denial.
Okay, sounds good.
I don't want that any more than they do.
Okay, all right. I have another question. Can we apply new H-1B with the same employer while we have a pending 221G with the same employer? So the person is telling,
yeah.
So
what is this question? I don't understand.
So
can you file a new H-1B visa with the same employer?
Yep. So they're basically telling, let this 221G be pending, but I'm going to start a brand new petition with the same employer to see if I can get a new visa. Just ignore this one or withdraw this petition.
I don't know. I mean, I suppose that you could do that. I don't know, but I mean, I guess the question that I have for that is, why would you do that?
Yeah.
And I think the answer is that person's doing that to try to see if the next one doesn't have 221G.
But that's not the case. Typically, from Josh, if they put clearance received on the passport, when somebody goes for stamping again, probably that clearance, they still have to go through 221G next time as well. Once you get stamped 221G, it's going to keep coming, right? That is.
Yeah, I share your opinion of that. I'm really skeptical that that would be a workaround. In other words, the logic is, well, I'm in 221G. Why not just start over, file a new application, and then the next one won't have 221G? I'm skeptical.
Skeptical. Okay. Can
Yeah, I don't.
somebody withdraw the petition? You know what? Hey, I don't want to deal with 221G. Can I just take the application back? It's possible to withdraw a pending 221G.
Sure.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. And
Yeah,
totally
you could say forget it. And
forget it.
I mean, if they have your passport, then that's a concern. But if they don't have your passport, then you could just forget about it, and you wouldn't even really have to do anything.
Okay, because I know somebody who went for H1B stamping like 3 years back in Middle East,
Hmm.
and it was pending for more than 1 or 2 years, and and he did not even know what happened to that case. And that person went for F1 stamping recently and got F1 and then came into the US, but he has no idea what happened to that case, and that employer, no relationship with the employer, and he did
Yeah,
not even withdraw. But he just went for another interview and then got F1 and came back. Um,
yeah. I think that's another example of how mysterious this all is. No one knows what it's about or why this happens or what they're checking or what they're fixing. I mean, you get all these results that when you look at them, none of it makes sense, right?
okay, all right.
Well, why would that be? That person got delayed for years and years for the last application. They go for an F1 visa and it's issued on the spot. I mean, none of this is making any sense. This is the absurd world we live in.
Okay, all right. Okay, so how many days does the lawsuit filing actually takes place uh, when we file? So do you deal with filing lawsuit for USCIS as well? Let's say if there is an H1B
Yes.
got denied. So now we spoke so far 221G, but how about brand new H1B got selected in the lottery, RFE, and then MTR, and then denied? So do you deal with that as well, Josh?
All the time, all the time. So we do with delays of at all sorts of points in the application process. So for example, you have a green card and you apply for naturalization. You go to your naturalization interview and everything looks fine. You deserve to be approved. And you go in there and they say, okay, we're going to let you know. And then a year goes by. We sue. And for naturalization, there's a specific law that says they have to make a decision within 120 days. And if they don't, there's a specific law that says you can sue. Most people don't know about this. So we sue to help people get approved for naturalization, and it works very effectively. There are people who go in for applications for green cards and through H1B visas and things of that nature. They apply, they deserve to be approved, but instead of being approved, USCIS just makes them wait for months, years. We sue to get those cases resolved. I've had people who've been waiting for 6 or 7 years for green cards, and everything's delayed, and we're able to challenge those delays. And I filed the lawsuits. A few more things about the law. Washington, D.C., because that's where all of the agencies for the government are headquartered. And so what that does is it allows me to help people regardless of where they're located. They don't just have to be located here in California or in Massachusetts or New York or something like that. I get cases from people in Florida, Texas, people in Hong Kong, wherever they are. So it doesn't matter, given the fact that we're doing the cases in DC.
Okay. If a client approaches you, typically what's the time frame? How long does it take for you to have the initial conversation with them to actually filing the case? What is the time duration?
Yeah, I give all of my clients a promise that I will file their lawsuit within 2 weeks. Unless their situation is extremely complicated or I'm really busy with something else, I generally give all my clients a 2-week guarantee. When they hire me, the lawsuit will be filed within 2 weeks.
Okay, all right, sounds good. All right, Josh, let's give it another few more minutes to see if we have questions. If not, we will wrap it up. Any other things that somebody who is waiting on 221G or who's planning to file should know about this process based on your experience?
I think we've covered a lot of it, a lot of the questions that I typically get. Another thing I just want to emphasize, I'll say it in a different way, which is that the term administrative processing, it sounds so official. It sounds like there's this official process that they're putting you through, called administrative processing. But in fact, it's nothing of the sort. Administrative processing is just nonsense. There's nothing to it. There's nothing that they're actually checking, or there's no formal, for example, there are no regulations that govern this. There are no written procedures that explain exactly what protocol they're following or anything like that.
Okay, all right. It's basically, as you said, it's a black box or black hole. Once you go in,
Yeah.
Unless you either wait it out or do this mandamus suit to get them to take action.
That's it. Those are the only two options. It's not all that complicated. And the other things that people do are they contact their congressman. They keep asking questions for the consulate. And I think even though those techniques are ineffective in terms of resolving the delay, I still recommend that people who are stuck in 221G do that, because it's important for the lawsuit to show that you've been diligent, that you've made all of these efforts. So I like when people have done those things.
Okay, one last question. I got a 221G blue slip. I always get that when I see, does blue slip, pink slip, white slip, does it make a difference? But essentially it's that whatever paper they can find to print out at that point in time is what that matters, right?
It doesn't matter if it's pink or blue or yellow. I mean, when I hear the word 221G, it just makes me want to sue. That's the only thing I think about. It's like waving a red cape before a bull or something, you know?
Okay, so the question goes like this. Blue slip, no client letter, and mismatch in salary mentioned in W-2 and LCA. A passport is retained by the visa officer. What are the chances of approval? So what would you say?
So what were the details of mismatch between the salary and the
W-2 and
LCA?
LCA, yeah.
Well, I don't know. I mean, again, I'd want to look at that carefully. What did it say? What was the salary on the LCA and what was the salary on the W-2? Let's say the person's salary was $78,250 and maybe the number was 77,000 or something. So it's just, maybe there was a minor typographical error. But on the other hand, if the person said that they made $75,000 on the LCA, but you look at the underlying W-2 and it says that they're only made 38,000. Well, then I think we got a bigger problem, right? And
Yeah.
there's some issue about whether the documents. I think the consulate then is asking some legitimate questions about whether the person truly is eligible. Because for an H-1B visa, one of the issues is whether the salary is a prevailing wage, and then whether the employer has the ability to pay that wage.
Yep.
So I didn't need to ask more questions, but I'm wondering what the deal is.
So mandamus, if they have to respond before 60 days, if yes, then why do case lawsuit itself takes 3 to 5 months after that?
That's a great question. Let me explain in more detail exactly how the lawsuit plays out, because I think that'll be instructive for people. The question is, hey, if they have to respond in 60 days, how come you're saying it might take 6 months? Well, at the end of the 60 days, the attorney for the government always, in every case, asks me for additional time to respond to the lawsuit. In every case. And I always agree to that because it's sort of the nature of the lawsuit. Even though I've been hired to get the visa approved as soon as possible, I say, great, you can have a little more time, because at that point, after the 60 days, that's when the attorney for the government is contacting the consulate, and the gears of the bureaucracy are actually starting to move at that point. And then at that point, you may see your case approved between 60 and 90 days. That case may be approved. But if it's not, then maybe they'll issue a request for some additional documents, or they make you fill out the social media form or something like that. But it's really within that 60 to 90 days when things start to happen. But sometimes they come back and they fight you and they say, we have no legal, they make all sorts of legal arguments for why they don't have to make a decision on the case. And then I have to fight them. And so we have a contest, and sometimes the cases drag on, and sometimes the cases may drag on for 6 months or more. And so the actual nature of the lawsuit is there's a lot of back and forth, and it's not just, even though they have the legal a responsibility to respond in 60 days. It's really sort of the beginning of this process.
Okay, all right. So when they fight back, they file a response to your case to the court, right? Or they directly have interaction with you?
Yeah, there's some communication, but if they file an answer to the lawsuit, then we may have a fight on our hands, and at that point, then the case may take longer, or something may be going on. But most of my cases are resolved within 3 to 5 months.
Okay, all right, sounds good. All right, Josh. Yeah, one more. Does a Mandamus case, when filed, differ between non-immigrant and immigrant visas?
I think that the importance of the visa to you as an applicant may be greater if it's an immigrant visa. That may be the case. So I think that there may be more at stake for an immigrant visa, and therefore it may make more sense to file a mandamus lawsuit for an immigrant visa. But conceptually, it's exactly the same. The lawsuits should work the same, and so on.
It's depends what's the impact to that person and the family. So that is what.
Yeah, if it's just a routine, like say someone contacts me like, I'm in 221G because I applied for a B2 visa. I'm not sure it makes any sense at all to file a mandamus lawsuit for a delayed B2 visa. On the other hand, you know, if your wife and children are in the US and you're stuck, and you're the father and husband, and you're stuck in your home country and your whole family's in the US on a F visas, then here's a non-immigrant visa where there is an underlying equity that would be compelling enough that somebody would want to challenge the delay.
And
but I think it has to be really important before you're going to go through the hassle of hiring someone to file a lawsuit in federal court.
Sure. And as you mentioned that example, Josh, I remember an example where wife and kids is US born. They are here in the US, and the wife is going to school on H4 visa. The husband went for stamping for H1B, got 221G. After 221G, they denied the visa. So ultimately, they said, we're going to deny this, and then we're going to send a revocation notice to USCIS. The wife and the kid are here in the US, so they have to pack the bags and then travel immediately. And she was halfway through her master's program on H4. Now she has to go for F1 interview to come and complete one semester, and then it's like, so
yeah,
like that.
So I think that's a case where you should definitely consider mandamus, because there's so much at stake. And I think you should always consider mandamus when there's a lot at stake.
All right. Okay. All right, Josh. I think you spent a lot of time answering a lot of questions. Again, josh.law is the site. And anybody
www.josh.law. Go on there. You can book an appointment with me. You can also contact me through Facebook. If you have questions about 221G or how I can help you, my full sympathy for anybody stuck in administrative processing, anybody delayed in this situation. But I want you to know that there is a way to fix this. There is help, and I'd love to chat with you about that.
All right, awesome. And if and when you reach out to Josh, please just give a heads up that here you came through Happy Schools, or you came to know about him through this one or 221G group. Then at least he knows that I drove you towards him.
Thank you so much for having me on, and it's a great discussion. Thank you for creating this group as well, which is a great resource for people to share their experiences, and so people know that they're not just waiting alone.
All right. Thanks a lot, Josh. And thanks everyone for attending this. Take care.
Take care. Thanks again.